Hey everybody, it's Greg Rice and we're here on the Hill, Federal Hill at Baco. And we're with Mr. Rick Simone.
Good to meet you.
How's it going, Rick?
It's good. It's a hectic time, but I have to say I'm optimistic through the holiday season, so I feel probably better because it's the holiday season, but it's a tough time for sure.
So tell us, before we get into what's going on with COVID, restaurants, who is Rick Simone?
So I am the president of EGN Consulting, which is an agency that does marketing, public relations, government relations, and event production. And we've been around for about 8 years now. We have a broad client base of nonprofits, organizations, corporations, restaurants, and Federal Hill is one of our biggest clients. So we oversee all of Federal Hill, and I serve through my agency as the executive director for the Federal Commerce Association. So they're probably one of my most active, visible clients, but we also have clients like the Cianci Foundation for Buddy Cianci's family, the Gloria Jeanette Breast Cancer Resource Foundation, the George Restaurant, and amongst others.
Wow. And how did you get started in this type of business?
So I got started doing consulting when I owned a restaurant up on Federal Hill back in the early 2000s.
Now what restaurant was that?
It was Renaissance Restaurant. It was actually located right next to where Sienna is here on Federal Hill at 242 Apples. So I had that for 7 years, and before I had that restaurant, I was director of tourism and director of conventions for the city of Providence. So I had a big hospitality and tourism background, but I formed my first company that did marketing and public relations while I owned the restaurant to help out some other friends of mine. And then when I sold a restaurant that I had in Providence and a restaurant that I had in Newport, I went to that agency full time, and within a month I had 7 clients. And that agency was Bella Consulting Events, and that just kept growing and propelling. One of our biggest clients was Alex and Ani, the jewelry company, and they bought us out 2 years into their agreement. They bought the company. So I merged with them and spent just about 3 years at Alex and Ani. I was supposed to stay a year, I ended up staying 3 years, and while I was there, I started to do some government consulting and government relations for people, and that's when I formed EGN that I have now. So I worked at Alex and Ani and EGN at the same time for about 9 months to a year.
What's it like advocating on the private side and then on the government side? Like, is that a different paradigm shift in your mind, or is it the same?
It is. I try to do more advocating on the business side, on the individual side of things, than I do working on the government side of things. I can't always relate or touch base with how government puts things out. I find myself relating more to the small business owners, to the individuals. So it's definitely a different paradigm for sure. But I think that I relate more to the small business, to the personal side, so I tend to be advocating more for that.
Every time I see something happening on the Hill, on the news that is, they always defer to you.
It's a nice thing, I have to admit. I appreciate the fact that they do that, and it seems widespread, and I think it's because I've earned pretty much mutual respect between the news organizations as a reliable source for things, and also from my colleagues up here at Federal Hill.
What do you think government and people that aren't involved in the restaurant business are not recognizing at this time when it comes to the regulations and their expectations? We were just talking offline here about the regulation of 33%, and now we can't do this, and we have to build these outside structures. What else are they not considering?
So both the federal government and the local government haven't considered a lot of things. If there weren't enough people advocating from a local level like we have here in Rhode Island, we're fortunate that we have myself, the Rhode Island Hospitality Association, the Convention and Visitors Bureaus that exist, and the Chamber of Commerce. So in a small state, we do have a lot of people advocating, but it's a matter of getting all of us to have the same message, and that's taken a little bit of time. On the federal level, there's not enough. We're fortunate again that we're a small state, so we have direct access to our senators, to our congressmen. So I think what's not been recognized is that the majority of small businesses survive week to week, if not month to month. And that's not understood. That's a challenging thing to understand. When the first shutdown happened, people that had to pay their restaurant sales taxes that were due from February and then got shut down in March, what most people don't realize is they rely on those funds till the very day the taxes are due, until they're due. And that was the first thing that made small businesses, not just restaurants, but other small businesses, realize that the state's out of touch with how they run. And we've gotten to the point where we're not counting dollars, we're counting pennies. So we went from quarters to nickels and dimes to now we're to the point that restaurants and small businesses now are counting their pennies to see how they can get through these moments.
What percentage of restaurants will stay open?
You know, I'm the eternal optimist when it comes to these things, and I have a better sense of feeling that I try to push people that way towards that sense of optimism. I believe in Rhode Island up until this point, up until where we are now in December, that we've fared better than other states. That more of our restaurants, more of our small businesses stayed open. I think that's partly to the character of the people in the state, where we've been more resilient and more creative, especially up here in Federal Hill. We had al fresco that lasted 26 weeks where we closed the avenue and brought all the restaurants right on the street that had never been done before, and it was 14 blocks of the avenue. So I think that that's to our credit, and I think had we not done some of those things statewide, that you would have seen that we probably would have lost 40 or 45% of our restaurants by this point. There's other states where they're in the 30s and 40% right now. I think that the next few months, the first quarter of 2021, is really going to be the telltale sign to know what we will have happen to us. And not just from restaurants, but from gyms and recreational, retail, and even more so the events industry. The events industry is reeling. Most of these people haven't worked in 6-7 months on projects. So I hate to throw out a number of what I think will happen, because I think that we're at the precipice now where this is the next 3 months for us to tell what we can do to get through the winter, which is traditionally a tough time, and what other federal government help can come back. We won't know until we have a new president sworn in, until the Congress is sworn in, what's really going to come back to help us in the first quarter. It's really challenging. It's very, very challenging. I this morning I had calls with an events group, and I had calls with another restaurant association group that I'm helping, and people are really, really hurting right now.
Tell us about that call with the restaurant group. Don't tell us details, but what was the gist of it?
The gist of it is that the money that's been promised currently by the state, things that we worked on through this pause grant that came out, and also the Restore Our Eye, the gist of it was that people haven't seen the funds yet, which is another challenging thing, and another thing that shows that you need to relate better to small businesses from the government side, is that they don't need the money in 2 weeks, they need the money in 2 days.
Yeah.
And that was the gist of this call this morning, is where are those funds, how much longer is it going to take, and then what are the next steps? Everybody wants to know from the day that we're talking about this now. There's the governor's coming out on Thursday, tomorrow, and everyone wants to know what's happening next. So we've proposed a certain amount of steps to the governor, which we think are fair and reasonable, and that was really, those two things were the majority of that call.
So do you think the governor is in a tough spot because she's damned if she does, damned if she doesn't? Is she always kind of on the chopping block?
I think anyone in politics is always on the chopping block, and that's kind of, you have to get that to know that if you're going to run for office, that's the nature of the beast, so to speak. I think our governor in Rhode Island has truly done better than most governors in other states. I think that she's, at the beginning of this, if you went back to June and July, which was kind of like the first few months, we were the best in the country. Our testing was okay, but all of our other statistics were the best in the country. And we got through those crucial summer months, which lends back to the fact that we haven't had a massive amount of closures. But now, we're all of a sudden, we're being said that the things that we're doing are the worst in the state. I think there's always an up and down side to what you propose, and in this particular situation, there's no one that knew what to do. And now you're learning as you go, whether you're a politician, whether you're Dr. Alexander Scott. So I can't come in and fault the governor for specific moves and specific steps. I can say that from our perspective that she has listened. She hasn't always done what we've asked, but that's her position.
Yeah.
But I can say that she's actually listened and kept us involved. I can tell you right now that there's very few other people I know that probably could have done the job that she did. So, and again, the governor and I are back and forth on one day we like each other, the next day we don't. But it's because of how I'm advocating and what she needs to do. But I can honestly tell you that I feel that the Rhode Island Commerce team have been responsive and listening. We haven't been always pleased with the results, of course, and we're still pushing and advocating for bigger and better things to get through this. But it's a tough situation for them as well.
So a guy like you, right, talking to the governor, there might be 50 other guys and gals talking to her.
Absolutely.
How does her and her team know, all right, this is the answer, or this is the compromise? Like, how do they delineate what they're going to kind of hone in on?
The majority of my conversations have gone through Rhode Island Commerce Corporation with Stephen Pryor and his team. The governor hops on various calls, and then the health department, of course, has to get involved. And then we have the Department of Business Regulation. So there's a lot of pieces in this puzzle to try to go through, because whether it's enforcement, health, or rating them, the governor's absolutely hearing from 50 people across every different sector, if not more. And I think that she has to analyze, or her team has to come down to analyze to give her the best advice as to what's in each area. Like right now, what we are doing in this pause, it's crippling us, but we knew that something needed to be done. So the restaurants, the retailers, the majority of the people accepted it to see what would happen over these 2 weeks, but it's not something that we can do going forward, right? It's just not there. Further than that, we've expressed that there's been nothing presented back to us from a local or a federal level that shows that we are increasing the case numbers. And if you look at what's happening right now in Rhode Island, our position is that the numbers have risen throughout the pause. They haven't stopped, they haven't gone down, whether that's from Thanksgiving or whatever you want to blame it on. If it's not going down and the restaurants are doing what they're doing, you can't blame the restaurants or the retail shops. Right. There's also a lot of analogies that we've started to give as of late, is that it's very challenging that you got a Walmart or a Home Depot or a Lowe's, these national brands, or a supermarket, where I could walk in, I'm touching people every 3 seconds, not on purpose, but yet we're taking the hit that we are. So I think we use those pieces to kind of push our message and our points to them, and I think that that's what helps us be moderately successful.
Now, a question I always ask folks, what's the least favorite part of your job?
You know, traditionally I would tell you the least favorite part of my job is having to sit down and try to figure out how to keep someone in business in good times. Like if someone's just, they don't have what it's taking, they haven't set up a marketing plan, or they just didn't plan things out right and they bring me in too late. Okay. Traditionally that's challenging, it's tough because I always feel like I go in and there's a 50-50 shot that if they're bringing me in so late, there's 50% they could survive, 50% they couldn't. There's no science to it. Right. Traditionally I would say that that's what year in and year out most challenging. This particular year, in 2020, I have never done so much crisis control management in my entire career. Right. Every day there is a new crisis, whether it's a business collapsing, a business needing help, finances, working with the state's teams to try to work on the COVID situation. So I've never done so much crisis control management and never worked so many hours in my life. So it's amazing.
So what are you doing to decompress and relax?
There hasn't been a lot of it. I had 2 times over the summer that I got away. Once I got to beautiful Block Island, which I had clients on. So I got to beautiful Block Island with my family for 3 days over the course of the summer, which was nice, but I still got chased down by news and had to do calls, but that was very nice. And then I also got a 2-day getaway in the summer with my wife. So during this whole thing, when I normally would have had 3 or 4 weeks of vacation time throughout the course of the year, I've had 5 days. Right. So there's, I think that my gut feeling is after the first quarter in 2021, there'll be more time to decompress, and I think that I will take advantage of that time when it comes. So,
and the message to the news: don't call me.
Yeah, when I'm away, please. When I'm away, they don't often know that though, so they really don't care.
How about one of my favorite shows is Bar Rescue? Mm-hmm. What do you think of a guy like John Taffer? Should there be more advocates and kind of people that, like yourself, that can toe that line, or do you think restaurateurs look at those people like, no, you're just another person trying to take money? I think right now that every restaurateur has appreciated these celebrity chefs and the people that do those shows and the people from the National Restaurant Association. They appreciated their perspective and trying to draw national attention to the issues. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any profound success. From a national level, PPP, which is still considered a loan until it's actually forgiven. The EIDL from the SBA is a loan. So right now there hasn't been, in the length of the crisis, and we're at 9 months technically, those people advocating are doing good work and they're saying good things, but nothing's come out of it. So I think that everybody would like to see something come out of it, and they're not challenging them because they feel that they're doing an overall representation of the industry right now. But we need something federally to come out. We need those people to use whatever might they have left to push for it, because there's been nothing that comes out for the restaurant, events, or hospitality industry specifically, just for that. Even the latest grant from the state of Rhode Island was grouped into another pot of money for everything. So it wasn't designated specifically to one industry. It's interesting. I manage rental property at Nexus, and we're seeing checks coming from United Way for $5,000, $6,000, paying for tenants' rents in the future and paying pass-through rent. So I'm looking at, this tenant, XYZ tenant, 3rd floor, gets a check for $5,000. They got 2,000 prepayments towards January, February, March, and it's like, how are they getting extra money? And they don't even have a business. They have, an apartment. Yeah. They should get something, but it just seems like when the chunks do go out, they're not going appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, you had a point on there, is that there's so many people in need. across the board.
Correct.
And, you know, for me, the challenging point is I don't know if someone that's receiving those funds could be a waiter or a waitress here at Baca.
Exactly.
You know, they could be someone that works in a gym or a retail shop. So it's hard to come out and criticize the funding sources that are spread out across the board. The prepayment thing that I think is fantastic. I wish that that would come more to this side of the avenue that I'm working on, because the first quarter is going to be insanely hard. And to know that organizations like the United Way are out there and able to do those things, to me right now, I have to tout that as a good factor.
Yep.
It's only because at the end of the day, you as the business person is getting the money, the
Yep.
people have a roof over their head, and none of us want to see anybody in a situation where that's the opposite. So.
Cool, Neil. I know you're a busy guy. The last thing I want you to tell the camera,
Okay.
folks at home, is what they should know about you. When they leave this interview, what should they leave thinking about Rick Simone?
So it's not so much that I want you to think about me. I want you to think about the things that I do, the objects of my passion that I promote, that I market, that I do crisis control management for. The state of Rhode Island is an amazing place, and whether you love it or hate it for politics or different things, all you need to do is step out your door when you live in Rhode Island and know what a beautiful, state that we live in, that we visit, that we dine here. There's a lot of things this state accomplishes that are not accomplished in other states, even during this pandemic right now. And I think that would be the one thing I'd want you to know about me, is that I'm the eternal marketer and the eternal optimist for our state as a whole, for every industry in the state, and that we all have a role to play in keeping it successful. So I think that I share that I want people to extend the optimism that I have in going out and supporting right now, whether it's buying gift certificates to help these businesses in the future, paying ahead, so to speak, whether it's making a larger tip to a waiter or a waitress. And I know everybody's resources are different. So kind of level out what you do, and if you could spread that optimism to help us out, we still have a long road ahead of us going into 2021.
And how can they get in touch with you?
The easiest way to get in touch with me is through my email. So that's rick@egnllc.com. So Evan, Giovanni, Nico, LLC.com. So the business is named after my first three boys.
Perfect.
So that's the easiest way, because I get a ton of emails, but I go through and check emails late at night and then try to get back to people.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you to Armando here.
Yeah,
at
Baco. This back patio that we're sitting in is
Beautiful.
the point of creativity and versatility right here. It's absolutely beautiful.
He took this from 2 parking spaces, and I'll show you some footage.
Yeah.
Put some nice pressure treated lumber up, a clear ceiling. He's got garage barn doors that open in the summertime, so a lot of positive has come out. This is 5 more tables
Absolutely.
of revenue for him compared to now. Inside he's only got 3.
And Armando, this poor guy, opened up literally 3 weeks before we were closed. His grand opening was 3 weeks before we were closed for the pandemic. So he's been through the ringer here. So this is another example of places that need our support.
Yep, awesome. And if you have any questions for me, throw them in the comments section below. Once again, Greg Rice from Nexus Property Management and Rick Simone of EGN Consulting.
Yep. Thank you very much.